There is a city in Oklahoma that most people associate with oil, with Route 66, and with a history of both extraordinary wealth and extraordinary tragedy. Tulsa, the oil capital of the world. Population 413,000. Built on oil money in a decade, host to one of the worst racial massacres in American history in 1921, rebuilt again, and sitting on Route 66 in a way that makes it one of the great American road food cities. The kind of city where the oldest restaurant has been serving the same chili since before the state was cool. Tulsa, where the chili has been the same since 1908 and the food has always been more interesting than the city gets credit for. Oklahoma became a state on November 16, 1907. Ike's Chili opened in 1908. The state was 1 year old. Ike Johnson and his nephew Ivan Johnson bought the Robert Morris restaurant at 2nd Street and Boston Avenue in downtown Tulsa and opened what they called a chili parlor. The restaurant did not have a name at first. It was just a place where chili was served. Customers started calling it Ike's. The name stuck. The restaurant has changed locations throughout the years, but the chili recipe stayed the same. For a long time it wasn't written down, but now it's written down and my wife knows where it is, said current owner Len Wade. The chili at Ike's is old-fashioned Oklahoma chili. Meat, chili peppers, spices, a thick base that has been developed over 116 years of making it the same way. It is not Texas chili. It is not Cincinnati chili. It is Tulsa chili. The chili that the city built around, the chili that has been served through Oklahoma statehood, through the oil boom, through the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, through the Depression, through every decade that Tulsa has existed. Will Rogers, the Cherokee comedian and social critic who was the most famous Oklahoman of his era, was a regular. As Will Rogers said, Ike's chili is a bowl of blessedness. Ike's originated in an alleyway of downtown Tulsa, near East 2nd Street and South Boston Avenue. It is now on historic Route 66. People driving the Mother Road stop specifically for the chili. The owner still mixes the recipe himself a few times a week. 4 generations of the same family have kept the same recipe. The Coney dog, a hot dog topped with a spiced meat sauce, mustard, and onions, is a tradition that spread from the Greek immigrant communities of the Midwest in the early 20th century. Detroit has its version. Flint has its version. And Tulsa has its own Coney tradition that has been running on Route 66 and through the city's diners since before most people know about it. The Tulsa Coney dog is served at the same establishments that serve Ike's chili. The overlap between the chili parlor tradition and the Coney dog tradition is complete. A Coney at Ike's means a hot dog topped with their 116-year-old chili recipe. The combination of the specific Tulsa chili and the steamed bun and the mustard and raw onion produces something different from the Detroit Coney or the Kansas City version. Tulsa's Greek community, which arrived in significant numbers in the oil boom years of the early 20th century, brought the Coney dog tradition and adapted it to local tastes. Tulsa sits between the great barbecue traditions. Oklahoma Joe's was founded here, Burns Co. BBQ developed here. The specific Tulsa approach to smoked meat has its own character. Tulsa-style barbecue leans on beef brisket and pork ribs, smoked over pecan wood. Oklahoma's state tree provides the wood that defines the local smoke, with a sauce that is slightly sweeter than Texas, slightly thicker than the thin sauces of the Carolinas, and specific to the oil boom culture of northeastern Oklahoma that could afford good beef and good time to cook it. The barbecue competition culture of Tulsa, the festival circuit, the community events, the church fundraisers, is one of the most active in the state. Oklahoma Joe's, founded in Tulsa by Joe Davidson in the 1990s before expanding and eventually becoming known nationally, brought Tulsa barbecue to national attention. This one requires an open mind. Give it a moment. Bologna is not typically a barbecue meat. It is the sandwich meat of school lunches, of childhood, of the cold-cut section of the grocery store. In Oklahoma, and specifically in the indigenous and African-American food traditions of eastern Oklahoma, it is a barbecue meat. A whole bologna log, sometimes called a bologna chub, is scored with a knife in a diamond pattern and smoked over pecan or hickory wood for hours. The scoring allows the smoke to penetrate, the fat to render, the exterior to develop a caramelized crust that is deeply flavored in a way the bologna in a plastic package is not. The smoked bologna is sliced and served on white bread with mustard and pickles, or on a bun with the same toppings as any barbecue sandwich. The smoked bologna tradition in Oklahoma traces to the 5 civilized tribes and the African-American communities of eastern Oklahoma, where commodity meats, bologna was cheap and available, were transformed by smoking into something of genuine quality. It became the barbecue sandwich of the people who could not always afford brisket and discovered that bologna, properly smoked, produced something extraordinary. Tulsa's barbecue restaurants serve smoked bologna alongside brisket and ribs. It is not an afterthought. Tulsa has a specific pizza style that most of the country does not know exists. Oklahoma-style thin crust pizza, sometimes called Tulsa style, is a thin cracker crispy crust pizza cut into squares, with a sweet tomato sauce and a generous layer of cheese, topped with a specific combination of toppings that includes the local preference for Canadian bacon and green pepper. The style developed in Tulsa in the mid-20th century alongside the rise of independent pizzerias in the city's neighborhoods. The crust is thinner than Chicago tavern style and crispier than New York thin crust. It is the pizza of the Great Plains, adapted to a region where the Italian immigrant tradition was filtered through the specific tastes of Oklahoma. Andolini's Pizzeria in Tulsa, founded in 2005, now considered one of the best pizzerias in the state, has been documenting and celebrating the Tulsa pizza tradition, alongside its Neapolitan and New York offerings. The specific Oklahoma thin crust style that developed in the city's neighborhood pizzerias is the style that Tulsans grew up eating, and that defines the city's pizza identity. In 1961, Clyde Fried opened a drive-in restaurant on 11th Street in Tulsa, on historic Route 66, called the Nighthawk. The burger he developed was a specific Tulsa creation, a thin beef patty cooked on a flat-top griddle, served on a toasted bun with a specific sauce blend, lettuce, tomato, and onion. The Nighthawk became a Tulsa institution. The drive-in culture of Route 66, the car hop service, the burgers and fries and root beer floats, was the defining food experience of mid-century Tulsa, and the Nighthawk was at the center of it. Generations of Tulsans ate their first burger at a Nighthawk. Generations of teenagers spent Friday nights in the parking lot. The specific Nighthawk burger, the sauce, the thin patty, the toasted bun, is the burger that Tulsa remembers. The drive-in culture that produced it has largely disappeared, replaced by chain restaurants. In the Tulsa food landscape, there are certain institutions so embedded in the city's daily life that they function less as restaurants than as civic infrastructure. Sagie's on Cherry Street, the neighborhood in Midtown Tulsa that has become the city's most food-concentrated district, produces cinnamon rolls that Tulsans line up for on weekend mornings. The rolls are large, soft, deeply spiced with cinnamon, covered in cream cheese frosting that pools in the spirals and runs over the edges. They are served warm. They are consumed immediately. The Tulsa cinnamon roll tradition connects to the broader Oklahoma wheat farming culture. The state grows significant quantities of hard red winter wheat, and the baked goods that Oklahoma's German, Czech, and Scandinavian immigrant communities developed from that wheat include a cinnamon roll tradition that Sagie's exemplifies. Cleora Butler, 1901 to 1985, was a chef, caterer, and cookbook writer based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She is the author of the 1985 book Cleora's Kitchens, the memoir of a cook in 8 decades of great American food. Gourmet magazine named Cleora's Kitchens the best cookbook of the year. Butler came from Texas in the 1920s to make Tulsa, Oklahoma, her new home. She was offered a position cooking for the Charles Robertson family, putting to the test all of the cooking lessons she absorbed from her mother, Martha Thomas. For roughly 60 years, Butler built a reputation for herself as one of the most renowned and most in-demand cooks and caterers in Tulsa. In 1961, she opened Cleora's Pastry Shop and Catering, a storefront of sorts for her specialties, such as sourdough French bread and baked fudge. But she had to close it 5 years later when her husband became ill. Following the death of her husband George Butler in 1967, Cleora closed the shop but continued her catering business on a limited scale, baked sweet rolls each week for the students at Holland Hall High School in Tulsa, and worked in the kitchen of Trinity Episcopal Church, preparing special dinners. Her cookbook, published in 1985, months before her death, was not simply a recipe collection. It was a memoir of a Black woman's life in Tulsa across 8 decades. The oil boom, the 1921 race massacre that she survived as a young woman newly arrived in the city, the Depression, the Civil Rights era, the changing food landscape of America. The cookbook that Gourmet named Best of the Year was also a document of African-American life in Oklahoma that no other source had captured. Barbara Haber, curator of Radcliffe College's 4,000-volume cookbook library, was asked by the Boston Globe to name her single favorite book in that collection. Oklahoma claims more miles of Route 66 than any other state. And along those miles, the drive-in root beer stand is one of the defining experiences of the road. Weber's Root Beer opened in Tulsa in 1933, the same year that Prohibition ended, when the country was ready to celebrate with something cold and sweet and specifically American. The root beer was made from a proprietary blend of herbs and spices, served ice-cold from a frosted mug at a drive-in, where car hops brought your order to the car. Weber's became a Tulsa institution for the same reasons that drive-ins across the Route 66 corridor became institutions. The car culture of the mid-20th century, the freedom of the road, the specific pleasure of a frosted mug of root beer handed through a car window on a hot Oklahoma summer evening. The root beer itself, not the generic root beer of national brands, but the specific, proprietary Weber's formula, is the taste that Tulsa associates with summer evenings and summer roads. Tulsa's hamburger culture is the hamburger culture of Route 66. The thin patties, the diner counters, the specific combination of local ingredients that the oil boom city developed in its lunch counters and drive-ins across the mid-20th century. The hamburger at Ike's, the same chili parlor that has been serving chili since 1908, is the Tulsa hamburger at its most straightforward. A beef patty, a bun, and the option of topping it with the same 116-year-old chili recipe that makes the Coney dog. The chili burger is the Tulsa hamburger in its most specifically local form. But the Tulsa hamburger tradition extends through the city's drive-ins and diners. Through Ron's Hamburgers, through Brownie's Hamburgers, through the specific local chains that built their menus around the thin, griddle-cooked patty that Route 66 food culture standardized, and that Tulsa has maintained through every decade since the oil boom made the city wealthy enough to build its first lunch counters.